to be with our family and friends, to think back about the good things that help us be good people in life, and for us, particularly for this group, to remember why we spend the time to do this, to take care of one of our most precious and sacred sites, and that's Mauna Kea, and for everything that Mauna Kea represents to all of us, for all of our different reasons. And so, as we do our work, we remember that. And mahalo for giving me this opportunity.
Mahalo. Thank you. She and I joked about it yesterday that she's always like ready to come in from the bullpen to save the game for us. So thank you. For those on Zoom, can we just confirm that all of you are alone in wherever you're sitting? All right. Thank you. We don't have any public comments on any of the agenda items. The next item of business would be approval of the minutes. Are there any suggested amendments or changes to the minutes? We're trying to skinny down the minutes, as you can see, and we're slowly getting there. So Pua and I are trying to kind of figure this out. Go ahead, Paul.
Chair, my inclination as since I was absent from that meeting would be to abstain, but do you have quorum if I abstain?
Yeah, I don't think quorum. I don't think abstention impacts quorum.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. So if I could get a motion to approve.
So I move that the minutes be approved as written.
A second.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? One abstention.
Thank
Mahalo. Okay, we're awaiting our newest member to join us today. He has a conflict in his schedule, but he wanted to join us initially in this meeting. So I'm gonna put that off for now until he's able to join Mayor Alameda. But what I wanted to announce to people about the governance structure is that what I need people to do in the next 30 days before our next meeting, because we'll have a discussion about it, is in terms of governance, one of the questions that has come up is that should we be establishing subcommittees, more permanent subcommittees to address certain issues? For example, we may have a subcommittee on education, on culture, on environment, etc. I need people to start thinking about one, whether or not they're in favor of creating subcommittees, more permanent subcommittees. Generally, my experience on boards have been that subcommittees generally do the bulk of the work on most boards, and they bring their recommendations and their work to the greater board. To have the board act and do things all together on every issue is a little bit challenging and somewhat inefficient. So I need people to start thinking about, one, whether or not you're in favor of committees, two, what committees you would suggest. And to get there, and for other reasons too, I would ask that if you have free time during the next month, that people reread the existing UH master plan and management plan to give you some context in terms of your thinking. We've talked about it before, that there's, a lot of hard work and good efforts and good things that are in those reports. People may not agree with everything that's in the plans. There are good things in the plans, but it will provide good context for you as you think about how we create a governance structure. There may be other governance type, internal governance issues that you might want to consider. But the first one that comes to mind for me is whether or not we create these standing subcommittees. But like I said, that's something for everybody to consider. So anyway, I wanted to give people a heads up to start thinking about it, because we'll discuss it at our next meeting in January. All right. So with that, I would like to introduce our newest member. But before I do that, I also wanted to just publicly thank again the former mayor, as well as Doug Adams, who sat on our board since its inception and have added a lot and did a lot of hard work. Having said that, with the recent election and his swearing in ceremony in early December, I'd like to introduce to all of you Mayor Kimo Alameda. He unfortunately has a conflict that even before he got elected, he has scheduled something for this day. So he's joining us via virtually. And I would ask that Mayor, that you introduce yourself and say whatever you want to say.
Sure. Thank you, John, and thank you, you folks, for participating in the authority. I've been following you folks, reading your minutes, read the plan, just kind of following you folks for about 2 years now. I've been on the campaign trail. You know, Mauna Kea has come up almost every time. So I just like to share that I bring a lot of information from the community regarding Mauna Kea, astronomy, TMT, Subaru, Gemini, CAC, you know, all the observatories. And so I that's why, you know, in my campaign, you know, I shared with Mitch as mayor, you know, you should sit on this authority because it's our island. And you know, and I'm Native Hawaiian. I know Doug had Native Hawaiian too, but you know, it's really special to me, and like it's special to all you folks. And so I just so honored and humbled to be part of the authority and to weigh in. I have a lot to share. I have a lot of what do you call mana'o from different communities. You tell me the community, I tell you the mana'o. I had over 72 talk stories. And Mauna Kea has come up every single time. So I'm super excited. I do have a meeting at 11, but I'd like to stay on until then, and then mostly observe and then sign off after that. So thank you, John.
Welcome, Mayor. And just for everyone's knowledge, we did John DeFries and I did sit with the mayor and with the managing director. It sort of did a informal type briefing about where we're at, what we've accomplished, where we hope to go. But as we continue on, we'll continue to have those discussions with the mayor to kind of get him up to speed as to exactly where we're going. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that, we do not have anything regarding governance. So we skip to the next item, which is administration, and asked Executive Director DeFries to give his report.
No, thank you, Chair Komeiji, and aloha and welcome to our newest board member, Mayor Alameda. That meeting that John Komeiji and I had with the incoming mayor at that time, I walked away realizing how much he will bring to the authority over time, and the intimate knowledge he has about different parts of the island will prove to be vital in how we engage the community going forward as well. There's a couple of housekeeping matters that actually haunt us. One of them is office space, and I'm going to ask Bill Stormont to weigh in. He's been running point man on this matter in as much as we're looking for space in Hilo. Bill?
Thank you, John, and aloha, Chair Komeiji and members of the board, and happy holidays, and welcome, Paul Order, board member, first in-person meeting. Right on. As has been reported earlier, we had an interim office lined up. Last week, Monday, I got a phone call from the property manager that said that the property owner was going to opt to lease to a longer term lessee. So we lost that spot, what had been called 32 Kino'ole. So the short story is we've renewed our efforts to look for more space here in Hilo, and as has been reported, there's not a lot of it out there, but we're looking more. And there are sites that we found that were not available in our earlier search. So I think it's like going to Ross. You gotta just go one time and find what you want. You gotta go in and go in again, go in and go. So that's the interim office story at the moment. As for the permanent office, the right of entry has been signed. Mid-November, the right of entry was signed. We're still waiting on the lease documents from DLNR, the long-term lease. And we are working towards getting fencing installed and security and a cleanup effort, because it's become it has been for some months now, well, for years, a site for homeless, houseless folks to find refuge. So we're working on that. Last week, Friday, the governor did sign the memorandum releasing funding, so we can now begin to pursue a contract working with DLNR's engineering office for a consultant to begin working on the plans for the renovation of that building for us. So those are the quick updates on the office situation. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions? Hearing none, let me move to item A, B. As you know, one of the more critical components to outlining the nature of our work and fulfilling every condition of Act 255 hovers around a planning RFP that was issued. And I want to thank the members of the evaluation committee for the time that they put into it. And at this time, ask the chair of the evaluation committee, Lloyd, to provide an update. Lloyd?
Yeah, thank you very much. As a recap, we are required by Act 255 to have a management plan. So we were successful to get out a request for proposal on October the 18th. And we had a proposal conference on October 25th, in which we had 2 interested parties. However, when we were to receive it on November the 20th, we had just one interested party. The evaluation committee met on November the 26th. And at that point, we recommended that we would have a face-to-face meeting with this one offerer, which we had on December the 5th. Thereafter, we had our concerns stated, and they just came in with a best and final offer, which I would be disseminating to the evaluation committee again, and we would try to set up a meeting as soon as possible to go over that. So that's the status we have right now. We still anticipate, hopefully, to have a contract if the evaluation committee sees fit that this one consultant would be able to do the work for us. And we will start the process February the 3rd, 2025. So
Lloyd, can you refresh everybody's recollection about who's on the evaluation committee?
yeah, the evaluation committee is made up of Neil Hannes, Noe Wong Wilson, Nahua Gillas from UH, Bill Starmark, and myself, 5 of us.
Thank you.
Any questions of Lloyd? Okay, thank you, Lloyd. From a process standpoint, the evaluation committee will meet and review the best and final offer that was received late yesterday afternoon. And the evaluation committee will forward its recommendations to myself, and I will be asking Chair Kumeji to join me. It's a substantial contract, not only in the nature of its scope, but the financial investment that will have to be made. And so we'll look forward to continuing on that track going forward. I have no real update other than you can expect us to poll you again for a board retreat. We have taken it at really the recommendation of Chair Komeiji, it reduced it from a 2-day overnight event to a 1-day event. And we're hoping that we can identify a date in January for us to all gather in person. Us being all of the board members and members of the senior staff. So we'll keep you updated on that process, but anticipate that we will be polling you. Another critical scope of work going on and being co-chaired by board members Ben Kudo and Paul Horner is the long-term transition working group. Later this morning, we've asked Greg Chun to provide some insight into it so that the board members have an appreciation for the complexity of this. But at this time, I'm going to ask board member Ben Kudo to provide an update.
Thank you, John. Happy holidays to everyone. The long-term working group had its inspection and site visit of the Mauna Kea facilities and grounds on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. It was a 2-day event, and we were able to visit with many of the different people who were in charge of different operations on the mountain. And I think Greg will probably go through that, so I won't cover it now. It was a very complete and fulfilling inspection and site visit. I want to thank Bill Stormont for the organization of the visit, the itinerary, and setting up all the different aspects and functions and activities of CMS over on the mountain. Basically, all the members of the working group, except for the DLNR people, were present. Paul Horner and I, and we also added Joel Kam and Natsumi Nishimoto, who are our outside counsel, legal counsel, that are doing the analysis of a lot of the legal documents. The next meeting of our working group will be next week, Friday, where we'll start to dive into the leases. But we wanted to do this site visit before so that Joel and Natsumi got a good idea of the complexity and the largesse of the whole situation up there on the mountain. I also want to thank Greg for hosting us up there, along with Nahua and Rodrigo, and making the site visit a very valuable experience for us all. Anyway, I'm available for any questions, and I'm sure that Greg will go through some of the details of the visit as well. But thank you.
Thank you. I'd ask the board members to defer questions until we do get to Greg Chun's presentation, which will provide much more detail. I'm going to ask Paul Horner to share his observations. I understand it was your first visit to the summit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of overwhelming for a first visit up at the summit. We went to Halepohaku last year, but through the tours that Bill set up for us, it really came to understand a more comprehensive and broad understanding of what those people go through every day, every single day while they're up there. And I've come to appreciate how it's the people up there, the people that are working every day that are making this thing work. right? And they're hardy employees, I can tell you that, man, because to do that kind of stuff up in that environment, it's just, it blows your mind, you know? And I think the Ranger, what was his name? The Ranger,
Dwayne White.
Dwayne Wiper. He was the one that really, when we met with him, this guy, you know, he is just kind of encompasses what every employee up there does, you know, because they feel ownership for everything up there, the INA, and making sure everything's running safe and taking care of each other too, all the way through that. So I was just blown away by the staff of that place. So, and I think that's what that place is about too. You know, you need people like that to care for something as important as the mountain. So
Thanks, Paul. Also, I'd asked Bill Stormont to point on this particular site visit. Bill, your kind of observations about the visit.
I'll just share, I think, and thank you, Ben, for the summary and Paul for your thoughts. I think coming away, and the primary purpose was, of course, to allow the council that we've retained to get a physical look at all of the assets and discuss the land boundaries, the general lease, both general leases and the road corridor, and the subleases for the observatories and the physical plant there at Halipohaku. And through that, we were able to do all of that despite some pretty serious weather. We were among the last to come off the mountain late Tuesday morning before they shut the road down as the winds were rising and eventually got to over 60 mile an hour sustained wind. So we didn't get it out of the car that much when we were on the summit. But that was fine because of the way it was set up and the material that was provided by Nahua on Greg's staff was very helpful for everybody. But I think the impression that I got from the visitors was that again, as Paul mentioned, the complexity of the operation there, it really is. The physical plant's one thing, and that's kind of the easy stuff in many ways. It's the more of the staff and the interconnectedness of all of the different operations that go on there between food and lodging and utilities and the rangers and the visitor station operations. It's a very complex operation that they have, and it runs very, very well. And that was the impression that was shared with me by Joel coming away from that. So I offer that. I have a lot of other details I could go through, but really, in a nutshell, that's what it boiled down to, was a better understanding of the physical plant, but also the complexity of the operation.
Thank you, Bill. Again, we'll circle back to this topic in an overview that'll be provided by Craig Chung later in the agenda. Any other questions on this particular segment of the agenda? If not, Mr. Chair, I'll move to an update on item Roman numeral 7, finance, and ask Lloyd as the ASO to provide an update on the financials. Lloyd?
Yeah, thank you, John. And again, board members, I think you have my financials in front of you or on your screen. I just wanted to go over again how state government works. You know, we started off with a $14 million appropriation, which the legislature authorized us to have. But, you know, the governor has the power to restrict funds. So he did, and our share was 391,000. He also had with budget and finance, took $10 million out of our $14 million. So in essence, we ended up with $3.6 million or so. And of that, I did make a budget that payroll would be $720,000 and all other expenses 2.888. Below that, I show it in your recap, you know, how much we spent in the first quarter on payroll and October and November. And we have a balance of $475,000, so that's on that budget line, which at this point is sufficient. Other costs is office and travel is minimal. And we do have a outside attorney's contract of $292,000. So we now have on other costs $2.8 million, $2.4 million. We anticipate 1.5 for our management contract, our office planning and architectural services at $750,000, and all other costs that for travel, office, and maybe rent in the future, $231,000. At this point, we have preliminary communications with budget and finance. We may not have enough funds to carry us until June 30th, 2025. So again, one of the criteria that was said at our earlier meetings was if they find funds for us, then we have to assure them that we would encumber it or spend it. So, that's how state government works. So, you get the money, spend it, or if you ask for it, spend it. So, we are looking at that, looking at preliminarily in terms of our management consultants contract, 1.5 may not be sufficient. So again, once we get that, either we go with it or not with the evaluation committee, I can go back to budget and finance and have another discussion. So that's where we are right now. And any questions I can answer.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Are we budgeting for at least one vehicle? Is it in there? I didn't see that.
We would have enough in our balance of 231,000, yeah, if necessary.
I think it's necessary. Otherwise, what kind of vehicles are our staff using to go up?
Should line item, yeah.
Right now, we're using the vehicles from University of Hawaii, MKSS.
And that's an ongoing agreement for us to have access to that?
Yeah, we've been co-managing all of those. Yeah.
Okay.
Neil?
Yeah, Lloyd. Lloyd, what are we calling that? Excuse me, that other pig that's working with Christopher? Well, what is the name of that pig? Creating an operating plan for us.
Well, projects and milestone big.
Okay, so I think the work we're doing in that is really important to help give clarity to our finances. When they're just numbers and people see positive and negative, they'll take it or they'll abuse our budget. But when we can associate consequences to the numbers, then I think we're protected. It's a greater level of protection. When there's emergencies like Lahaina and so forth, it's hard to insulate ourselves from some of those kinds of needs and conditions or circumstances. But to the extent we say if we get this cut, that means we have to have a reduction in force. That means we can't pay the rent. That means we have to double the time it's going to take to do our master plan. That there needs to be that, and we're early in that work, and we're working as fast as we can to get those milestones in. But as soon as we get them in, we need to associate that to our budget so that people know what the consequences are of shifting monies around. Thank you.
So I think part of the challenge that we had is that what BNF did is they looked at our past spend. And historically, we're just getting off the ground. I mean, really getting off the ground now, right? So the cuts were based upon the fact that we, spent de minimis amounts basically over the past year, right? So
Right.
what we're trying to do you make a good point, but in addition, we're telling them that using the measure of our past spending is not a good measure of what we're doing in the upcoming fiscal year. Yeah.
But if that's all they have, that's all they'll use.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
they'll look at the run rate. They'll look at the
Yeah.
run rate. And they say,
Yeah.
okay, this is all you need. So
Yeah.
we need to project a revised run rate
Yeah.
that's backed up with a concrete plan.
Yeah, and that's what Lloyd,
We're doing that.
that's what Lloyd is presenting to PNF.
Yes. John, you got a question back here? Question?
Actually, Neil Hannes, basically said what I wanted to say. And as we look at submitting our budget request for next year, and we support it with line items and also the reasons why. Then it becomes harder for them to say, well, you didn't use it last year.
Yes. Any other questions pertaining to finance? If none, Mr. Chair, it's okay to move to item number Roman numeral 8.
Okay. Greg, if we might impose on you to do your operational update.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. At the end of the fiscal year, just like you folks, we have a whole bunch of reporting that we're required to do. And so one of the things that I asked our managers to do is kind of do a closeout of their activities for the fiscal year. And we share that information with our advisory groups. And so we wanted to share it with you folks as well. And that information that they provide gets reflected in our annual reports to the legislature and to the land board, et cetera. So I suggested to John a couple of weeks ago that for today's meeting, we have Justin Ye come in and share with you a synopsis of the work that they've done on the resource management program for the year. This is a high-level summary. There's a lot more details that get reflected in the actual written reports. So for those who don't know Justin, this is Justin Ye. He's our resource management director. He leads a team of folks that are very dedicated to the work that they do. Their work is primarily directed by the comprehensive management plan and in support of implementing the various aspects of that plan. So I'll turn it over to Justin, and Justin has a few slides that he'll share with you folks.
Thanks, Greg. Hello, everybody. Thanks for the introduction and the opportunity to present to you guys. So our team is consisted of Taylor Warner, Anuhea Robbins, Leona Kikoa Lum, and Carmen Libertor. So next slide. So yeah, I'm the one here presenting to you guys today, but of course I can't do it without my team. So I just want to highlight them. Anu and Taylor have been on board since last year in 2023. We hired on Leona Kikoa Lum from Hilo. She helps with our plant propagation, our outreach group efforts, doing some guided tours, and then also just pulling weeds as well. And then I want to highlight Taylor Jenkins. She was our pipes interns from this past summer, and she helped do some research. And right now, she grew up in Oahu in Manoa Valley, but she went to Punoho and is studying at Colorado College. But she really wants to be a researcher, and we're helping her prepare a journal article for publication to continue her research from this past summer. And then Carmen Libertor comes from us from the Pacific Northwest, and she helped support Leona's activities. And our project is mapping out all of our outplats that we've done so far in the Haleʻiʻapo area. And all of our countless selfless volunteers can't do all the stuff that we do without them either. Next slide. Yeah, perfect. So these are all of our required standard operating procedures that we're required to do each year by our CMP. So SOP 1 is cleaning and personal belongings, and SOP 2 is inspection of construction materials. And due to the decommissionings in 2024, in total, we did about 265 inspections on equipment and vehicles. This was done between coordinated efforts between Big Island Invasive Species Council, our organization, Center for Mauna Kea Stewardship, and also SWCA, who was a contractor first by CSO for their decommissioning project. Out of those 265 inspections, 4 of the inspections were re-inspected after clean, and then 1 of the inspections were rejected and asked to come back after treatment due to termites. We had such a large increase from 2023, where we had 176 because of the decommissioning activities, and so it kind of made us rethink our inspection strategies, because most of the inspections are done for things going up, stay up on the mountain, not for things coming down off the mountain. So we have to think about that if we're planning to do more decommissionings in the future. And also we did our facility monitoring. So each quarter, we go every 3 months, we go up to all the observatories with place traps to look for any new arthropod threats that are found in any facilities. This year we didn't find any new ones, but we have seen Cardiocoglosuchi, which is a type of ant that has established itself around Hawaiʻi. But we do our best to treat our parking lot bars every quarter and put out base stations in June and August to help control ant populations to prevent transport up to the summit. And so far, we haven't found anything at the summit, so that's a good thing. And we'll keep continuing our monitoring. In 2024, we also did our SOP 11, which is our annual alien invertebrate monitoring, and also vector monitoring. So those types of monitorings go on throughout the environment at 111 sites from HP all the way to the summit. And we did about 226 traps. And this year we had 7,008 vector bugs in our traps. This is a huge increase from 2023, where we only had 106. And part of the research that Taylor Jenkins was doing was to try and do some correlation tests, maybe looking at predator and prey relationships done by another researcher, and looking back at our 12 years of data to see if there's any correlations with that. So we look forward to the publication. And then we also had SOP 12, which is our cultural monitoring protocol, conducted by PCSI. On those types of events, we don't let less than 2 people go out there, just because of safety reasons. We're hiking out 5 to 10 miles throughout the science reserve to all these cultural sites that are very remote, and looking for any changes to them, uses of them, or any new invasive threats biologically. In terms of restoration activities, this is all done pretty much for the love of it. We're not required to do these types of things, but we really feel it's our passion, and to make sure that Mauna Kea is encompassing different aspects, we want to do these types of things. So, of course, we're doing volunteer repos. We did about 15,000 pounds of invasive vegetation removal this year through volunteer employee efforts. We outplanted about 167 new outplants from Mauna, Aveo, some of the mintless mints, the non-trees, Puakala, Pilo, Ho'okolau, Ubadi Arborea, Ule, and then Hina as well. And so that just every year we're just trying to add more plants and remove more weeds, and we're making progress. And then currently we have 400 silver swords in our greenhouse right now, a partnership with Beal and R&Rs. Some of these plants will go into our enclosure for education, and some of them will go into a Oahu closure up in DHGL. And so we have a partnership with DHGL as well. Next slide. Cultural landscape, I mentioned earlier that we did the cultural monitoring of the historical sites. There's 263 sites. We visited about 106 this year in 2024. And then we're working on finalizing a contract to continue monitoring and reevaluate our monitoring protocol And then that contract is for the next 3 years, so that should cover us until the transition, hopefully. And then next slide. This stuff takes up the majority of my time, this kind of thing. So what we do is we review research permits that come into the UH, and then we run them through our environment committee, cultural committee, and then also Mauna Kea Management Board, and now you folks as well, for your guys' approval. So just a little bit to highlight some of the current research going on. Right now, we're working with Dan Rubinoff and Brad Rio on an arthropod interactive food network display. So this touches upon his doctoral research, where he was able to lay out through DNA predator and prey relationships within the arthropod community up there on Mauna Kea. And so to highlight this, we want to set up a display in the biz along with a bug box to help educate visitors there. And then Norbert Schroberger is doing a permafrost research. We just received a publication or a draft of his publication for a red algae that's found in the snow up there and describing that species. And so right now we're reviewing that at the environment committee, and I can send it off to you folks if you folks are interested in reading about it too. And hopefully that gets published as well. And then we just started working with Professor Natalie Graham at UH Hilo, who had this big grant to do an Indo-Pacific DNA library of arthropods. And because we have so many arthropod samples from 14 years of monitoring, we have a great amount that we can send to her so that she can help complete her DNA sequencing stuff. And hopefully, looking towards creating a arthropod museum for Hawaiʻi Island at UH Hilo. So hopefully we can transfer our entire collection and have that housed there permanently for future use by researchers and the public. And next slide, just some future goals. We've been putting together a restoration plan for Hawaiʻi, which includes an educational trail and another greenhouse to help support conservation activities and education of the public, and also provide recreational opportunities, which is one of the requirements laid out by our CMP. And then we're designing a seed scatter trial to help hopefully get some research and data on lower cost initiatives for restoration. And then also the state is kind of moving towards a seed bank and having access to seeds post disturbance and fires. And so I see Haleʻipohaku as a great resource for that because there's structures there and facilities. So time is low and the humidity is low. And so energy costs would probably be reduced in that way. And then we could be a multidisciplinary field station, truly. And then we want to reassess our monitoring plan for both arthropod and cultural sites, and then help you folks transition and co-manage it with us. And I appreciate you guys' time. Shoot me an email and reach out if you have any comments or suggestions for our. Thank you.
Question, Justin?
Yeah.
In the previous slide, there was a Haynes high elevation effects.
Yes.
Research. Forgive me if I missed it, but what was effects on what?
So it's sorry, I didn't go over that one. He is working on the effects of high elevation on muscle protein synthesis. So because of the decreased oxygen at that elevation, they want to see how muscle protein is built, pretty much.
Okay.
And so they were doing environmental chambers while they were sleeping. So they would simulate sea level oxygen for some, and then regular atmosphere at that elevation. And then they would do hikes every day. And then they would go and take a bunch of measurements, blood samples and stuff to see how they're
Effects on
doing.
humans. Got it. Okay, thank you.
And that will hopefully lead us to getting hazard pay for working up there. Nah.
I think that Sumi would agree.
Go ahead, Neil.
Thank you. Thank you. Justin, thank you for your report. It gives a good sense of the scope of your activities, and it's not lost on us that these activities are occurring under rather difficult conditions, physical conditions. So to do anything is a challenge in that sense. What I'm looking for, and I wonder if you have it or if you could kind of shape it for the future, is progress towards strategic outcomes. and the orientation of your activities to outcomes for which you might set certain critical performance indicators that would indicate that give us a sense of progress from meeting to meeting to meeting. For instance, on the I sense that you have a risk mitigation strategy, and that you're trying to keep this area free of habitat transforming threats. And you do that by monitoring, and you do that by, eliminating and so forth. But if we could get a sense of what your milestones are, I mean, what your target is for that and milestones, then we'll know where we are. Likewise on restoration, how much native presence do we have there? How much would you like to have there? How much are you going to add next year and the year after that and the year after that? Can we measure that? Cultural sites. What level of documentation have we documented these sites? Do we understand them? Are we promoting the right level of community engagement with those sites? Research. Are we just reacting to other people's ideas about what they want to research up there? Or do we have a research agenda? Are there things that we need to know about this place that we should be spurring research? So, there's ways to kind of craft the good work you're doing and kind of position it towards some outcomes. So then we can see your activity in relationship to the logical connection to the outcomes, and then we can measure progress and know we're winning, and know that all this effort that you're putting in and your team's putting in is amounting to something. It's making the place better. We're being better stewards of the place. That makes sense?
I have a good story for you, Neil. I told this one to the AG office during the visit, but you each had funded a bunch of Wildwood research, right? And they found a Wildwood that fronted on Mauna Kea the last 30 years. So they teach us out that Wildwood enclosure, we're gonna plant plants in there. And then I was fishing the other day, and I seen this shadow fly over me, and I was like, oh, what is that? Onipa bird? Oh, no, eyes around. Yeah. The shearwater? Nah, it's too big to be the regular one. And I think that's the whoa. So I messaged my friend that did the study actually and let him know, like, I think I seen one flying above the boat. I never gave him a picture, but pretty sure that's the one. And he said, yeah, it probably is. It's probably one that fledged from that enclosure this past year. And so to bring it back full circle, I think, it doesn't feel like we're making good steps forward, but when you have moments like that, it feels like you're really making a difference.
Well, you can over metric this stuff, and metrics are important and so forth, but those kinds of anecdotal things are also an important part of the record. So I hear you. That's important. But I think just really being strategic, having strategic outcomes that we're working toward is a way for us to keep track of, and not just get happy with our activity. Oh, we did a lot of good stuff, but we know that the good stuff is amounting to transformation in the right direction. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why I kind of came up with the restoration plan, because I didn't know what direction we were planting at and what was guiding us, and so I had to do all that stuff. I started.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think a moment that's actually really also mahalo for that presentation and mahalo for your guys' work. That's part of the crucial aspects of what definitely we are pushing and community wise the rise of our community's consciousness to Mauna Kea was to see these things happen, to see these sciences strongly supported and enhanced, because that is the direct care and restoration and for our Mauna, and to be able to continue to monitor and to support the restoration of the Ohua Wakea, which we refer to that. These are the Ohua, the clan of Wakea, these things that are in the heavenly realm there, is essential. And I would just want to share, I was very pleased. Just a couple weeks ago, we had our Aha Makahiki, our annual Makahiki ceremony that we do, or our opening ceremonies up there at the visitor center area. And we always assess. And to see the growth of the plantings that are over by the Hina Hina Reserve area, to see all of that being able to become from its planting each year, we've watched it since it's been in the ground for a couple of years now. To see that progress is really uplifting. we made it a point in our ceremony to actually go and acknowledge all of these la'au. And really that's what we want to see. That's what we want to encourage. I know myself as a teacher, and when it comes to Mauna Kea, that's one of the first things we want to teach is that in particular is Owai, who is this on the mountain, all these bodies and everything that is there. So very, very excited to see that. I'm stoked to hear that you guys have a plan for a second greenhouse. I was like, yeah. I know when they built the other when they built the other big parking lot down there, we realized, okay, you just took out about 20 old growth mamane to grow that. But good platform for a big greenhouse. Just take that thing right there. But to maximize the ability for this place to be a piko, to really become a kipuka that Kanaka are stewarding to ensure that that continues to spread outward. So, but I'm really appreciative for this work, and really, really want to support this for sure. Mahalo.
Thanks for all your guys' comments. I'll take that.
Moving on, if there are no more questions for Justin. Okay, Neil, appreciated your feedback to Justin. Would love to have you come and spend some time with us if you have time to. There's a lot of backstory behind a lot of this stuff. And a lot of the research that has been done, and even some of the research that currently is being done, such as the erosion study, is actually part of a UH research agenda, our CMS research agenda. So would love to be able to spend some time with you and kind of catch you up.
Happy to do so. And Justin, I'm sure you know in the conservation community, you probably have relationships with people like Natalie Kurishima and Namaka Whitehead and Jason Jeremiah and teams like that who, on the Kamehameha side of things, have been goal oriented because we had to account for, okay, Malama, 358,000 acres. What does that mean? How do you and what do you spend, and how do you know your spend did anything? So we went through a lot on that, and that's the team that did it. So they'd be happy to help as well, I'm sure. Thank you.
Okay, if we can shift gears to the next item that I'm going to report on, and this has to do with the asset transfer working group and the work that group has done. At the November 15th meeting of that working group, Chair Kudo asked if I would present CMS's views on what is the most relevant place or items and place to start, given these thousands of pages of the inventory that we have compiled of our physical assets, our real property assets, our entitlements, et cetera, human resources, et cetera. It's obviously a large task to have to take on, and figuring out how each, what I'll call category of asset gets transferred and what's involved is going to be different. Obviously assigning and transferring a lease is going to be different than vehicle, something like that. So I prepared a short presentation, and John DeFries asked if I would share it with you folks, thinking that it'd be a good way to sort of give you an understanding of what the working group is really sort of doing, needing to do, and is going to be getting into. So could I have the next slide, please? The short story is our recommendation is that we start with the real property agreements, the entitlements, the permits, the operating agreements that the university has in place, because those are probably going to be the most challenging and complex to figure out how this assignment and transfer process would work. But before, and I'll get into the details of some of what we covered in the working group meeting. But what I wanted to do before we got into that with the working group was make sure folks understood sort of the connections and the interrelationships between these various documents, these various agreements, and how they relate to the assets and the human resources that we're looking at. So some of you have seen this particular graphic I've used in the past before in other presentations. It's kind of a high level view of how, at least for university, how our management regime, if you will, sort of works, how it's put together and how it works. And it's comprised of a number of different plans that then translate into policies, that then translate into administrative rules, and then are reflected in things like leases and subleases and permits. For us, where it all starts is with our master plan, which is where we have proposed to DLNR how we propose to utilize these lands to support astronomy, to support the various public activities that occur there. That master plan, it goes into a lot of detail, as you folks know, but it really is sort of the vision document for the university. Now, that is supported by what's called the comprehensive management plan, and that has various sub-plans. And the management plan is really focused on the human activities. Sort of how do you manage the activities that are occurring on the lands? And that gets reflected in various management policies and programs. Now, the one thing that I wanted to highlight for the working group was, in our case, the CMP, the Comprehensive Management Plan, is actually a requirement that we have in order for the CDUPs, the actual conservation district use permits. And there's a whole story of how that came into being, but the DLNR basically has required us to have a comprehensive management plan in order to properly assure the conservation district use permits that have been issued are being enforced and complied with. Then we have our administrative rules, which in our case, Act 132, which authorized university to develop administrative rules, focusing on public and commercial activities. That is sort of the nuts and bolts of how these plans and these policies and programs get administered. And then the last quadrant, we have the leases, the subleases, and then our operating agreements that we have with our sublessees, the observatories, as well as the various permits. And those things basically articulate the partnerships, the property rights, the compliance requirements that folks have to comply with, the observatories have to comply with. All of these things have to work together. When you start to tinker with one, you have to understand how it gets reflected in the rest of the framework, excuse me. Now, overlaying all of this, as you folks know, these are culturally sensitive lands. So that has to be reflected in everything. These are public lands that have diverse public uses. So our plans and policies have to cover a lot of things. There are the conservation district use requirements that get reflected into this. There is this issue of astronomy as a state policy that are also obviously reflected through all of this. And in the case of MKSOA, as I read Act 255, your management plan has to in some way address how you folks are gonna, what you're gonna require in these various elements, as well as how you folks are gonna enforce what you folks come up with. So what I wanted the working group to understand is that when we get into talking about a lease or an operating agreement or a permit, you have to understand how they're all connected. And I think that message was actually reinforced by this week's site visit. You can have the next slide, please. The next thing I did with the working group before I got into sort of the details and the nuts and bolts was you know, as the authority has been going through your process of figuring out how you're going to approach developing your plans. I took it upon myself to develop for myself, for CMS, I wouldn't call it a transition plan, but it's a framework that helped me understand what are the major categories of work that we, university, are going to have to do to support this transition. And what are some of the major tasks involved in those categories of work? And as I was going through that, one of the things that I felt would be important would be to sort of take the Act 255 elements of what I see as them, what Act 255 says your plans need to incorporate, and lay that out into I wouldn't call it a process, but at least a flow chart of how those things get interconnected. So this is my view of, at a very high level of what your folks' work is all about, and how at least how I organize it or think about it. You know, obviously your management plan talks about needing to establish a framework for future astronomy on the Mauna. It talks about you folks having Chapter 171 authority to issue visas. And so your plan has to address how you're going to, what are your criteria in your process. It gives you folks permitting requirements, although I think there's still some clarification that could help around how conservation district rules will be enforced or applied for you folks. But you folks have broad permitting authority. And then, of course, there are the commercial activities, the public uses, public access, and then your resource management programs that I know you folks want to begin building on and doing more of. Act 255 doesn't really explicitly talk about how does operations support for astronomy get dealt with. But the working assumption that we've had at the Joint Management Committee and in my work with you folks from the very beginning is that, you know, you folks would be taking over all of that operations support. Those things eventually lead to what you folks are authorized to do in terms of issuing new leases and permits, which has implications for future decommissioning. All of those things also have to feed into your administrative rules, because your rules are really where you now say this is how you're going to enforce these things. And then obviously all of this also feeds into informing your programmatic activities, your stewardship activities, your education activities, and your research activities. And then what I see in there is that all of that sort of feeds into developing your financial plan, which Act 255 says you folks need to be self-sufficient by a certain date. The reason why I shared this with the working group was because when we talk about assets such as physical assets or even the permits or even our human resources, they are hand in hand. They go hand in hand with all of these different elements that have to be reflected in your plan. What our people do are in service to our plans, our policies, the rules, etc. And what I see is that you folks have the same need to develop your own plans and rules, etc. That employees would then be responsible for implementing. So I wanted to make sure that the working group understood how all of that fit together. Can I get to the next slide, please? So this is where we got into the details. And as I said at the beginning of this presentation, our recommendation is that we start with the real property agreements. University holds 2 general leases, one for Haleʻipohaku and one for the Mauna Kea Science Reserve. And then we have a grant of easement for the roadway that connects the mid-level facilities to the summit. Those leases and that easement are issued to UH from the BLNR or BLNR. And that sort of sets the overall framework for us to be able to then issue subleases. And these are the subleases that we currently have with the various observatories. I highlighted Caltech because, as you folks know, we're in the process of terminating that lease now that they've decommissioned. So this is where our recommendation was to start. And so we spent some time yesterday, or actually on Tuesday, when we toured the summit, actually looking at the subleased areas of all the observatories. Next slide, please. Just a quick reminder of what those leases and the roadway corridor cover. The next slide. This comes from our master plan. This just details the sublease areas. So we can go to the next slide, please. The next tranche of documents that we've recommended the working group then take up are what we call our land use entitlements, which are basically our conservation district use permits, and included with those permits are various terms and conditions that were outlined in associated environmental reviews for these permits. So either an EA or EIS. So these are the on the left there, the CUPs in which we actually, university actually is the applicant and holder of the permit for the various observatories. And then on the right there are various other conservation district use permits related to other improvements that have been done over time. So this is where requirements for operating either an observatory or Halepohaku or the Visitor Information Center or various infrastructure. These are where all of those requirements are detailed, are in these permits. Next slide, please. Now, in the case of the university, along with those permits and the subleases in particular, we have another whole set of agreements called either operating and site development agreements, or in the case of TNT, it was called the scientific cooperative agreement. Now, these agreements go hand in hand, as I said, with the subleases and the CUPs for these various facilities. So this would be the next tranche of documents that we've recommended the working group gets into. What's in these agreements are various terms and conditions that UH and the MKOs have agreed to, and they cover a whole range of different things. Many of there are common elements across agreements, as well as in some cases, these agreements had very specific terms and conditions related to that particular MKO or observatory. In these agreements are where UH observing time allocations are documented and how that all is going to be allocated. And what I emphasize to the working group is that as we get into these operating agreements, there's probably going to be a need to look carefully at unbundling of what are unique UH relevant conditions versus what MKSOA would assume based on your folks' authorities. Some of the conditions in these agreements were specific to UH. On the right-hand side, you see some examples of the kinds of terms and conditions that show up in these agreements. All of the agreements have a term or condition that deals with how the observatories will help pay for facilities and services that at Halepohaku. As for those of you who have been in some of our budget review meetings, you know that our services that are provided through MKSS which is Mauna Kea Shared Services, up on the Mauna, are paid by user fees from the observatories. And so how that works is all documented in these agreements. In some cases, observatories made contributions to building of specific infrastructure, dorms, cabins, etc. They also, I don't have it listed here, made a contribution at the time that they built, that they were being developed to an infrastructure fund that was used for large infrastructure CIP type of work, paving the road, etc. In other cases, they have some very specific terms and conditions, and I just wanted to just highlight a couple. In the Gemini agreement, for example, it says UH, and here I just inserted MKSOA, but UH shall make every effort to ensure the renewal, extension, renegotiation of the general lease. Or UH shall use its best efforts to secure the lessor's consent and to provide its own approval or objection within 60 days after receipt by said lessor of any request for approval for such structural alteration or addition. So there are some terms like this in these agreements that we'll have to go through and really sort of tease out what exactly makes sense for MKSOA. Next slide, please. Next thing I recommended is we take a look at the UH specific assets. We have 3 observatories that we own on the Mauna. And then we have our mid-level facilities as well as the university-owned conduit and fiber optic network that the university helped to fund to put in. I highlighted those 2 because I think when we get to this point in the process, we want to have some discussions about how those facilities are going to be, those assets are going to be handled in the future. Next slide, please. My final recommendation was that once we get through all of that, then it makes sense to start talking about staffing, positions, our various accounts that we have, the physical assets, themselves, the operating permits that we have, files and records, which the site visit, the folks on the site visit had a chance to look at where we store all of that stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason why these come later is because, as I said, all of these physical assets, the staffing, are all in service of implementing our various plans and policies and the rules, et cetera. So that would be the last set of, or last tranche of things to take on. My last slide for the working group was to just sort of reiterate that these transfers assume certain things are in place, that your management plan is in place, especially in terms of fulfilling the requirements of a CDP. That your administrative rules are in place because our administrative rules are specific to public access and commercial activities. Your administrative rules are going to have to cover a lot more than that. You have the organizational capacity to take on the operations and assume the responsibilities that you folks agree to assume. And then regarding future property agreements with UH, the MKOs, or anybody else proposing to do something on the Mauna. I have pointed out that, it seems to me that clarification on how you folks hold title for the lands that you're going to be responsible for still needs to be clarified. That actually sets in motion some of the things about how you will then approach leases and permits, et cetera. So I know that it was a lot, but John had asked me, as I said, to share this presentation. This is the exact same presentation I did to the working group. So we've since then have had some good conversations about a lot of this stuff, especially in the last 2 days with the team.
Greg, let me add, the reason I asked Greg to replay this, both Justin's and Greg's presentation were part of a JMC meeting right before Thanksgiving. And you're going to hear periodic, consistent updates on the work of the transition working group. And I wanted the board members to have some understanding of the components to it and the complexity of it. And so you're gonna see this constantly appearing on the agenda. Actually, incremental progress that's being made by the working group. And I'm glad the site visit came off when it did. And the consultants that we've retained have hit the ground running on this. So, Chair, I don't know if there are any questions, but we can certainly open the floor.
Go ahead,
Ben.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Greg for organizing all of that. He's been real helpful for the working group. As most of you can assess that the heavy lifting is very heavy. But the good news is after Greg was through with his presentation, nobody quit the working group. Everybody got the positive attitude. We got to keep everybody, focused, and we have a 4-year time frame to finish all this work. It's going to be really, really a lot of work to do. So I hope you wish us the best, we got our job cut out for us in the next 4 years to complete all of these transfers and analysis. But thank you, everybody.
Other questions?
Neil Hammes referred to the projects and milestones working group, in which in future meetings you'll get an update from the PIG itself. But what's being developed is a project management platform. Neil, you can see from just this briefing that we need a project management platform dedicated to this transition. The interconnectedness to all of it is a sequence of switches that have to be hit in the correct sequence.
Absolutely. So it really heightens the importance of that work. Some of it's, we need people like Ben Kudo, and attorneys to just kind of plow through it. But the key issue for me from a governance standpoint and as a non-lawyer, certain parts of these agreements, we'll probably just step into the shoes of UH. Other things, I think we want to think about that. For instance, your examples of the scientific and cooperative agreements that UH, given its mission, has accepted certain obligations and so forth that may not be as easy for us to accept. We might want a little bit more independence. We might not want to step into your shoes, the UH shoes. We need to craft our own agreement that aligns with our own mission and processes and so forth. So flagging those early so we can have really good discussion is going to be important. So there's a whole volume of work that's just tedious, and we're going to have staff or attorneys or somebody to take care of that. But for us guys, who are kind of at a policy level, I think those are the policy issues that got to come, for our discussion, I think.
And I think
for approval, but that's where we add the most in terms of input. Thank you,
Neil. I think that what you say is absolutely correct. And I think that's why it's really important, as John said, there's certain switches that have to be turned on as the work proceeds. And one of the switches is the development of the master plan. Because in the master plan, a lot of the issues you just mentioned are dealt with from a larger perspective, from a 30,000 foot level. But when we get down to this 5,000 foot level, it makes our job easier if we know which direction MKSOA versus UH versus DLNR are headed, or want to separate themselves from, want to embrace whatever it is that they want to do. That's going to help us a lot. So I know that Rich's, Masuda's committee is very important to get that process completed as soon as possible. That's going to help us tremendously. Anyway, I got to run now, John. So sorry, I got another situation that I got to handle. So
thank you. We're about to lose quorum. If Ben goes, we lose quorum. So if we have anything else.
We do not, Mr. Chair, we don't have anything requiring a quorum left on the agenda. So
Yeah, I forget what the rules are with Sunshine.
Yeah, if we lose quorum, then all we can do is accept public testimony on any remaining matters on the agenda.
Well, let's do this real quick, Ben. 1
Okay.
minute. You have anything on the JMHC that you guys want to talk about?
let me just say that there is nothing else to report or vote on the joint management committee level. Procedurally, if there was something to vote on, you as board members would have received a staff recommendation from me in advance of any presentation. We highlighted that agenda item, but there is nothing to report in addition to what Justin and Greg delivered today. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions before Ben has to leave?
I just had wanted to just echo one statement just to really want to also echo to what Uncle Neil just had mentioned too, and that process and listening to this too is and one that always kind of will always call us back to the foundation of remembering why this stewardship was created. We are not here to take on and carry on solely what was the perceived and the proven, inability to take care of the mountain properly prior. That's the whole reason that this body was created. And so to hear the processes of what and make those decisions, what we're going to carry on, and what needs to POW, and also in hearing a lot of the complexities of how things were set up prior. I can just say to Mauna Kea, you can see the complexities and the interweaving and the messes that humans bring upon the mountain. That's exactly why part of it is in our goal to move forward, we should definitely be simplifying these systems out. When it comes to stewardship of Aina, it's actually much more simpler to take care of Aina. It's the complexities of humans coming onto the place that has built all this up. And so I really want to remind us again of our foremost responsibility is the mountain and the care of the health and well-being of the mountain. And in that is sometimes that will be a matter of also decomplexing as we go through these processes and look toward the future as well. So just want to echo to that. Mahalo.
No.
Yeah, just have one last comment, and it was on the last item that was on Greg's report about a question over our jurisdiction or authority. And so I just want to point out to the committee that that is something that needs to be discussed further because I don't believe there is a question about our authority as given to us by Act 255. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, Ben, thanks for hanging around.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
With that, we're going to call the meeting to an end because we've lost quorum. But just remember that the next meeting is on January 9th. Same time, same place. Okay, so everybody have a happy holidays. Thanks for the Greg for the very detailed reports, and Justin. Part of what we're trying to do is educate the board using and complying with Sunshine at the same time. So thanks for hanging in there. I know that there's a lot that you got to chew on, but at least we wanted to give a very high level presentation to all of you about that.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, thanks everybody. Have a happy holidays, and we'll see you.
I move that this meeting be.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, anybody opposed? Thank you. All right, happy holidays. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.